Is life happening to you or for you? Stay tuned. This is Damon Cart from NLP Gem. The video you are about to see was taken from my NLP practitioner training. If you like the video, please click like down there. And if you want to get more of these videos, please click subscribe right down there too. And hit the bell. Also, leave a comment or a question. I will follow up with you. This kept coming up where I felt like things were happening to me, and then I would get upset and I would get reactive about it, and then I would eventually solve it. But I would go through this whole process of getting angry about it, thinking about it in terms of being not fair, that these things just happen to me and it sucks and it's slowing me down, and on and on and on, making whatever story or narrative about it. So of course, whenever I started uploading or downloading the video from the camera to my computer and I realized there was no sound, I was just so angry, and I was just like, oh, this sucks. Shit like this happens to me, and I was, going into this narrative, and I was angry, and it's nothing wrong with getting angry about something like that. I think I'm not saying that. There's nothing wrong with that, because you have an expectation, you put some work into something, and it doesn't turn out like you expect. It is natural to be angry, and if you're not, if you're likely pushing that away and not accepting the reality of it, or not accepting your feelings or your emotions. So I'm not in any way suggesting that we shouldn't get angry. It's just something that happens. We get angry. That's our emotional response. But what do you do after that? What do you do after that initial emotional response? And I stopped myself because I realized I was engaging in that type of thinking, going down this hole of things that suck happen to me, or shit happens to me. Things I don't like happen to me. And I really had to stop myself and say, okay, well, what kind of person would say that? A person who feels like they're being victimized by something. Okay, well, what am I being victimized by? I'm an atheist, so I don't think God or the devil is out to get me. Am I being victimized by just like the universe, like that New Age kind of idea about the universe? That kind of sucks. Like that doesn't fit. I don't believe that. So why not things happen, and then I respond to them? And that immediately started creating solutions. As soon as I did that, I was thinking, okay, well, what do I do now? I go solve the problem. So instead of tying myself up in all this stuff about, oh, this happened to me, then I'm now the victim, then getting past that, I could go and then solve this problem, and things became more practical. So I started breaking down the equipment. Okay, well, where's the piece that doesn't work? And eventually I found that the battery was the thing that didn't work. It is actually an egocentric thing to think that things happen specifically to you, because, is the universe all here for me, and it's doing things for me sometimes, and it's doing things against me sometimes, or things that I don't like. And it's absolutely ridiculous and absurd if you really think about it. So things are happening, and then I'm responding to that. And what that does is it empowers you to say, okay, well, how do I want to respond to that? Instead of getting caught up in a story that some powerful force is acting against you, or even for you. I mean, the other way that you could look at this is people who are psychotically optimistic, they tend to be sociopaths. They think the world is kind of there for them. The world is happening for them. And then you have the victims who are feeling like the world is happening to them. But we can, and we don't want to be too detached from that. We don't want to say, well, no, the world is happening and I'm this other entity who's sort of thrown in the mix. Well, no, we're definitely a part of this whole thing, and things are happening, and sometimes we do something, and then the response to what we do is something that happens to us. So I don't want to clear that out and say that, well, that never happens, nothing ever happens to you. Well, it does if you're engaged in that thing. What happened here with the microphone is, once I would not allow myself to go into that story, and I got very practical about how to solve the problem, ultimately, I was responsible for that. I should have had another battery. I should have checked the battery. I should have kept tabs on how that was working. And I chose to not do that, probably to put my attention on something else. Well, forward after losing all that video, you can imagine my attention will definitely be on that at all, periodically to make sure that the battery doesn't fail. So when you're thinking, when you're listening to the language of how you think, check in with that. Or is your language indicating that things are happening to you? For you? Or more like things are happening and you have choice. And mainly that's about responding, or how you respond. So definitely I caught in my language that this happened to me. And I stopped myself and got back to, okay, well, this happened. How do I choose to respond to this? Well, I could go into this victim mode, create a whole story about how the universe is out to get me and feel justified in my feeling. Or I could say, no, I'm gonna look at this as this happened, and now I have choice about how I want to respond. This freed me from the emotional part of it and the story part of it, and said, okay, well, now I can choose my response. I want this thing to work. I want to figure out what happened. I don't want it to be a perpetual mystery and always be something in the back of my mind that I fear, because I'm going to do more video and I'll never quite know if the sound is going to fail or not, and that's going to create some sort of insecurity, which continues to feed this emotion that things happen to me and I don't know what's going to happen to me next, and it could be really bad, and now I'm going to fear that, and then when it does happen, I'm going to say, because things will inevitably happen that I don't like, and then I can say, you see, I knew it. Bad things just happen to me. So I get caught up in this belief, in this narrative that just perpetually feeds itself. Break that, and get back to things happen, and now you have a choice how you want to respond to that. Now, you could definitely make the argument that this happened to me. I'm not saying that this is necessarily not true. It's more, you have the choice to decide how you want to go about that. How do you want to respond to that? And when you catch your language indicating any of these things, that should be like an indication to stop and say, okay, no, I don't want to go into this story. I don't want to go into the emotion. I want to go into the choice to what do I want to do here? And you may choose to, you want to be a victim. I'd rather be a victim than solve this problem. Or I'd rather just have this idea that everything's just going to work out and the universe is going to give me whatever I need to make that happen, and because the universe is working in my favor. And I don't think that ultimately serves us. I think it's probably a better way to think about it than this, but I think ultimately either one of these is egocentric and it's feeding a false narrative. And inevitably I think this will at some point shatter, unless you are a bit of a sociopath. One of the, when I keep using that word, that is one of the traits of somebody who's sociopath, or what they call antisocial, is they're very charismatic oftentimes, and it's because they have sort of a detachment from other people. And they tend to, like, you think like Ted Bundy, they tend to be very charismatic. They tend to feel like the world is happening for them, and they feel like they can't get caught. And if they do get caught, they're going to talk their way out of it. So I think that's what I'm indicating with the danger of this. Like, they can't be touched, and because the world is always working for them. If you go too far with that, it's dangerous. If if any one of these, you can do it. We probably all do to a certain extent. It just depends on how far you go into it. But the more you can detach from that story and emotion and get back to, what is the ultimate outcome of what I want out of this? How does this relate to NLP and what we're learning, I think that's one of the reasons why NLP was created, is to come to the understanding that I live in a world where I don't have to, the world is not happening to me. I live in a world where I have choice, and I know that that's not necessarily going to come from seeking something external. I have to look at how I process information, how I create my own reality, and that is the key to understanding or creating a world where I do have choice and I can do different things and I don't have to respond according to my old programming or the stories that my parents told me or the stories that my culture told me or the stories that other people were telling me. I can be practical about this. I can look at the ways that I've responded in the past and notice patterns and then say, okay, I'm not going to indulge in that anymore. I'm going to create a new pattern. I'm going to focus on what my outcome is. I'm going to have choice about how I do things. One of the reasons why John Grinder and Richard Bandler got along is because they were attending these student meetings at various times, and it was random. They weren't like meeting each other there. It was just, these were student meetings that were happening at the University of Santa Cruz, that they were going into these dialogues where these groups of people would go into these dialogues, and one person would say something or bring up an issue, and then somebody else would stand up and say, you bringing up that issue or saying it the way that you did makes me feel sad or makes me feel bad. And they were engaging in all this, and Grinder and Bandler were there kind of throwing up their hands and like, why, that's that victim mentality, is you control me by what you say, you control me by your actions because you're making me feel a certain way. And they were saying, no, we can have control over that. And they got very frustrated by that. And that was one of the things that kind of brought them together. They didn't like the way that the culture was moving in that at the university, and so they actually started speaking out about it. But that was one of the things that the common ground that they found to work together is this idea that no, you do have choice. Nobody else controls you. That is within your control. So when we feel like outside events are controlling us because they're happening to us, then we're not in control, and that perpetuates that feeling of being hopeless and helpless and not being able to do anything. Of course, we don't have complete control. If you feel like you have complete control, then you're going and you're indulging the other one, the one that where the world is working for me and that everything is happening for me and I control everything. And again, now you're still caught up in that egocentric mentality. Step out of that, know that things happen, and I have my responses, and my responses can alter the way things happen, and but things are going to happen outside of my control. So it goes both ways. So basically, the best solution is choice, being able to choose when it's most appropriate or most useful for you to view life as working for you or happening to you if you want full engagement, or sometimes it's good to be sort of detached so you can solve problems better. It all depends on the situation. There's no right or wrong way, just what is most useful to you. Check out my website, nlp-gym.com. There's some free NLP training there for you if you want to check out what it's about. Also, I have a live event coming up in Santa Cruz, California. You can check out the Facebook page or my YouTube channel for updates on that live event with Dr. Matt. He's an international NLP and personal development teacher, coach, trainer, author of 13 books, speaks and lectures in 7 different languages. Quite an extraordinary talent. He'll be coming to Santa Cruz November 4th, and he'll be giving 3 talks throughout the day on personal branding, also on persuasion, and on how to create or basically design your identity. If you like this video, remember to hit the like button and also hit subscribe and hit the bell so that you can get notifications when new videos come out. Take care.